So we all were already aware that Elizabeth Warren was running for president in 2020 because she launched her exploratory committee, which is very annoying. But she formally announced her presidency on Saturday, and I will show you guys the clip of her announcing right here.
This is the fight of our lives, the fight to build an America where dreams are possible, an America that works for everyone. And that is why I stand here today to declare that I am a candidate for President of the United States of America.
So she has announced her presidency formally. I believe she did it with Joe Kennedy there. He's apparently endorsing her. This is going to be a very interesting Democratic field. It's going to be a very interesting Democratic primary because it's going to be extremely deep. You know, we already know Elizabeth Warren's running. We know Cory Booker's running. We know Kamala Harris is running. I'm assuming Bernie Sanders is going to run. Tulsi Gabbard has already announced. We know Yang is he's running, but I don't think he's going to make it too far. There are going to be kiddie debates like there were in the Republican primary, the prior time. That, the 2016 primary and the Republican primary, there were kiddie debates because there were just so many candidates. So Elizabeth Warren, she is a kind of mixed bag, okay? And I've done a full breakdown of when she had announced her exploratory committee, and I'll kind of talk about that here and also add in some new information. So first off, I want to show you guys the clip of her backtracking on Medicare for All.
Private health insurance in your vision of the ideal American healthcare system?
So let's start with the battle we're having right now and talk about the things we need to be doing, because I don't want to lose sight of this.
Okay.
It's good to talk about our overall goal, and here's our overall goal. This is what distinguishes Democrats from Republicans. Democrats believe healthcare is a basic human right, and we fight for basic human rights. Our obligation is to make sure that everybody gets coverage at the lowest possible cost to all of us. So what does that mean? Right now, it means fighting the Republicans who are trying to sabotage the Affordable Care Act. We've got this lawsuit going on down in Texas where the Republicans are trying to do what they couldn't do with the votes, and that is trying to repeal the Affordable Care Act, to make it okay to discriminate against people with pre-existing conditions, to cut off access to health care for millions of Americans. So job number one is to defend the Affordable Care Act. Job number two is to make changes where we need to make them right now. Changes to hold insurance companies accountable when they're trying to cheat people, when they're trying to scam people. Changes right now in what's happening with drugs, prescription drugs. We need to lower the cost of prescription drugs. 1 in 4 Americans say they can't take drugs that are prescribed to them because they can't afford to pay for them. I have, for example, here a proposal for generic drugs, which are about 90% of all the prescriptions that people fill, to be able to bring those costs down to just a nominal cost. And the third, how do we get universal coverage? Medicare for all, lots of paths for how to do that. But we know where we are aiming, and that is that every American has health care at a price that they can afford, and that the overall costs in the system are held as low as possible.
But right now, your vision for Medicare for all, would it all be a public option, or would it include private insurance?
So right now, we've got there are multiple bills on the floor in the United States Senate. I've signed on to Medicare for all. I've signed on to another one that gives an option for buying into Medicaid. There are different ways we can get there, but the key has to be always keep the center of the bullseye in mind, and that is affordable health care for every American.
That was a very, very disappointing clip, to say the least, because it shows that Elizabeth Warren once again is backtracking what she has said previously. And Elizabeth Warren has a lot of mistakes and a lot of bad things that she's done recently, and we're going to go over that here in a second. But this position on Medicare for All really is like a near deal breaker, because she is somebody who is supposed to be a ardent supporter of Medicare for All, and people need to get this right. Okay, here's what we need. We need a Medicare for All system where private insurance cannot duplicate the the product of Medicare, just like we have in law right now. My understanding is the law right now is private insurance cannot duplicate Medicare. And then you can get private supplemental insurance if you want. That is what Bernie's most recent proposed bill said, is that it'll abolish all current private plans. Everyone will have Medicare, and then if you want basically an advantage, you want a supplemental private insurance plan, fine. Here's the thing. The idea of having multiple routes to garnering universal first is a problem because of the implementation of it, and in and of itself, it's setting you up for failure, because what you're doing is you're offering an increasingly massively difficult process. And so when Nancy Pelosi says every state can get a single payer or a public option, we laugh at that and laugh at her like she's a clown, because the idea of doing something so weak at every single state is insanely, ridiculously impossible, okay? So that's a really ridiculous idea too, but she doesn't act like she's just saying that. She's saying that because she's trying to make a political calculation now, or she doesn't want to endorse Medicare for all anymore because of the ramifications that come with that. She doesn't want to do that. So she's now making these, sort of swirly comments and shit, and that's not cool. I don't like people who are, as candidates, who are political calculators who make moves based on political calculations. Medicare for all, yes or no. Okay, you can get private supplemental insurance, but all current ones that duplicate Medicare will indeed, or all the current ones will basically be abolished. And then everyone will have Medicare, and you can get private supplemental insurance if you want. It's a simple yes or no question. There really is no more explaining to do. Now, there are a lot of downfalls of Elizabeth Warren. Now, I'll give you another favorable thing. She did propose a 2% wealth tax on money, or on people with over $50 million in assets. Is a great idea. There is a big problem that we have, which is we have, a property tax, where we have a tax on housing property, but people who have massive gains in the stock market where their net worth is rising, there are taxes when you do, actual transactions with your stocks, when you sell them and shit. But there's no tax when they're just chilling, gaining value. So how is Jeff Bezos gaining so much net worth when he's barely being paid? Because his payout is, I think most of it comes from just compensation for security. And then other than that, he gets like $100K a year or something. So how does his net worth rise? Because his stocks go up. So you're talking about stocks rising, and there's no tax levied on that. So the net worth just keeps going through the roof. The net worth keeps going through the roof. And so that's the thing. Now, there may be a constitutional concern with that, and if that is, we have to make a move to amend the Constitution. But I'm not exactly sure on how that exactly will play out. That's a favorable thing. I do support that. Now, the negatives. There's a lot of negatives. First of all, she, in the 2016 primary, did not come out and endorse Bernie Sanders for president, when clearly he was the most progressive candidate in the race, especially when Hillary Clinton is borderline Republican in a Democratic primary, running for president as in the Democratic primary. And she did it, and the worst part about it was a political maneuver. It was a political calculation. So we're dealing with, she doesn't have the same positions as Hillary, but she's using that same political calculation type thing. You see what I'm saying? So she calculated that, Bernie Sanders, he probably won't win, so I'm not going to endorse him because I'm going to compromise my morals, my authenticity. He's taking the Dave Rubin route, basically, for that little bit, saying I'm not going to endorse him because I want to win in 2020, which is ridiculous. I don't want somebody who's just going to make political maneuvers and calculations. I want someone who's a courageous, principled, serious fighter for progressive causes. That's it. That's what I want. Other things that are negatives. She came out, very late on the Dakota Access Pipeline for someone who claims to, have Native American heritage. It was unbelievable. One of the recent military increases she actually voted for. So, don't forget about that. That's a serious mess up there, and I don't know why she did that. Bernie Sanders voted against it. So, it's not some situation where it's like, all progressives voted for it. No, Bernie Sanders voted against it. That is unacceptable. The increase in the military budget is unnecessary, and And if we were to reroute those to free college, we'd fund it 100%. Now, other negatives. There is this clip where Kyle covered where she's on Seth Meyers' late night show. And he literally sets her up. Okay, we're talking about mainstream late night comedy setting her up for a dunk on Democrats and their corruption. You're never going to come by that, okay? Because those are all establishment dudes and they're not going to rock the boat like that. Only one to do that would be Jon Stewart, but he's long gone. And she immediately pivots to going after Trump. And that's what you saw in the Medicare for All video too. You saw how she immediately pivoted from fighting for Medicare for All to, oh, look at those guys, we need to stop them. Yeah, we get that. But this is a primary. You need to talk about what you support. Because I care about that. I don't just want someone who's just going to maintain the status quo. In fact, if we go to single payer, there's no coming back from that. There's no coming back from that. One of the reasons why Obamacare so easily replaced is because it was a half measure. It wasn't, really going in the right direction on healthcare. It didn't solidify it. So that is a really, really big concern for me, man. So on foreign policy, massive blind spots. You're talking about political calculations in the way that Hillary Clinton did them, which is disgusting and unacceptable. You're talking about now walking back Medicare for All. I don't know how she ranks in my power rankings. I still don't know whether I'm Liz or Tulsi. Now, obviously, Bernie Sanders is better than both of them, but Elizabeth Warren, I'm still really trying to think where she falls in my ranking, because she has done a lot of things that has infuriated progressives, and she is continuing to do so, and it is extremely unsettling and disappointing, to say the least. So I don't know how to feel about Warren at this point. She has announced her run for president. Let me know your thoughts about Elizabeth Warren and her presidency. Do you have her over Tulsi? Are you going to support her? Just all of that jazz. Just, leave it down below about Elizabeth Warren.